Okay, so my first question is related to your new film, which is entitled Love Freely but Pay for Sex. Once again, just very briefly, because we'll go into details about the film more, but for someone who doesn't know what this film is and what it is about, could you just, in a few sentences, tell us about it?
Love Freely But Pay for Sex is a documentary style mockumentary film, and it's about a pay for sex policy that the government are trying to introduce. Basically, what's happened over a period of time in Great Britain is people have become frustrated more and more with taxes and bills and affording to put food on their tables and feed their kids and live, basically, keep their cars on the road, that type of thing, pay their bills. And what's happened is this frustration has grown and grown and grown the more the government have created more and more cuts, and the price of things rising, and people have become more and more frustrated with this as time has gone on. So what's happening in the film is, in this frustration, people are like, what do I own? I don't own anything. The only thing I own is myself. And over this period of time, people have began selling their bodies as a way to make money, as a way to make some extra income to live, to survive. So what's happened, basically what's happened, a system developed where it's kind of working out. Now people are not really happy, but they're making a bit more money, and they're getting by selling sex, selling their bodies. Basically, it's become this thing where 89% of people in Great Britain are living this way, making some extra income. And while this has been going on, the government have been observing how much money is being generated in the economy in Great Britain, and they're among themselves. They're like, look at this, look how much money's being generated. We need to get on top of this. We need to work out a way to regulate this, to regulate tax and legislate this. And so what they're planning to do in the film is introduce a pay for sex policy where you'll basically pay tax on any sexual intercourse you have with anyone if you're not married to them by law. And that is what the film is all about.
Okay, I really like the fact that you mentioned in the film because that is a point that a few people have a problem understanding. But yes, now what I want to talk about specifically is about the outrage and controversy this film has created, which apparently was not really something you expected, or at least not to that extent. So, could you tell us a bit about those negative reactions and feedback you received?
Yes, definitely not to the level I expected. Definitely way beyond that. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride in terms of the controversy that the film has created. Um, it's a controversial topic, and I knew that initially. I just didn't realize how much. And I guess I knew I was making a film, that was presented as a real life documentary, but I didn't realize to the extent how serious people would take it. You know, um, it's funny. I have people that actually used to speak to me before that don't like speak to me anymore. They kind of like disown me, and this is like people who are not involved in the film, and even people who are in the film themselves, who actually have, you know, amidst this controversy that the film has kind of stirred up, they kind of distance themselves, in the film, but they're like, "Whoa, I need to separate myself from anything to do with this film,"
Yeah,
you know.
I
And
saw that actually. Yeah.
yeah, it's been interesting, and it's only like it's early days. It's interesting where it will all go. But I've had lots of different things. I've had press calling me up, and they're like, where did you get your statistic of 89% of people in Great Britain from? We haven't been able to find anything, and you know. I approached certain people to cover the film as well, in the media, and they're kind of standing away from it and don't want to get involved, kind of thing, and being very standoffish about covering it, on the basis of even on the basis of the fact that this young black filmmaker,
Hmm.
coming out of Hackney, London, East London, who's managed to pull together this film himself. He wrote it, he directed it, he produced it, he shot it, he casted it, he's even in it, he edited it, and not even on that basis, like a positive story. They just kind of like standoffish from it, don't want to know, kind of thing. It's been a lot going on, and I hope to talk a lot more about everything um, as time goes on. But yeah, there's been a lot of that kind of kind of vibe. But I just didn't expect. I knew that it was touching on a lot of things, and there were a lot of some buttons you could say that would be pushed, but I didn't realize to this extent. And I guess that's art in a sense as well, and at its finest. I don't know, but yeah, it definitely has been that. There's been that element to it quite a lot.
Okay, well, I guess you can't really do something that big and be that successful in other areas of your life and not be criticized because some people just leave apparently to criticize other people. So I guess that was, yeah, that's not too surprising. Probably the extent of it is surprising, but the actual reaction is not too surprising to me. Um, we talked about the negative feedback and controversy the film created, but what I want to talk about now is more the positive reactions for once, and also the actual purpose of the film, why you actually created it. But I'm sure many people asked you that already, so switch things up a bit and make it a bit more personal and actually share part of my feedback, the one I actually sent you when I watched the film, and yeah, ask you to react about that. So just a few extracts of what I wrote to you just after watching the film. I found this project very interesting as it makes people think. Whatever people think about this pay for sex policy, they have to think about sex while watching it, how they do it, why they do it, and who they do it with. And I also talked about how paying for sex could mean giving greater value to it, doing it with purpose, and not making it an activity shared with just anyone. And something I saw in the film, which I mentioned as well, is the importance of making it sacred. And you mentioned marriages as well quite a few times.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was the purpose in? I mean, was it part of the purpose, or was there much more to it? Why did you create Love Freely but Pay for Sex?
Well, why I created it. I mean, I'm an artist first, and it was born out of that. An artist creating something. Just being inspired to create the next thing. It was basically I was. This is 2007. We're going back to now when the concept came about. I was, basically listening to watching not watching a Tina Turner music video, and um, I was basically the video is called "Private Dancer"
Mm-hmm.
by Tina Turner, and it's not like a sexual video or anything like that, but it is quite erotic. She's talking about I'm a private dancer, dancing for money, that type of thing, and basically it sparked this thought of like, wow, imagine if like everyone paid for sex, like if it was the norm to pay money, it was a
Mm-hmm.
monetary thing, to have sex with somebody, like everybody, not just like prostitution, but everyday thing that was, just like going to the shop and buying your milk,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that sparked the idea, and I thought, obviously being a writer, being a poet, the first thing I did was write this down, and I started writing these points in favor of this idea, just to see, how it would work, So I started writing these points down, and then these points, then later, as I become more involved in film stuff, and I'd come across. Basically what I did is I filed it away, didn't look at it again. It was just there, and I'd come back to it again like late 2011, and during that time of being involved in all the film stuff and all that. I looked at it again, and I was looking at it then from a visual standpoint. I was like, wow, there's a lot here. This needs to be. This could be a film. This could be something
Mm-hmm.
visual. So then that inspired me to start writing the points into dialogue segments, and those dialogue segments then later became the script, and from there the film was born. So in terms of setting out, what I was aiming to achieve, that wasn't there yet. I was just being an artist and creating at the time,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then later it became, me wanting to make this into a film, and that's how it was born, you know. Um, and later I realized for me it would be a launching pad into bigger things in relation to film and being involved in film. So that's kind of the course it's taken.
So we talked about the outrage and controversy. We talked about the purpose of the film. Something I find quite interesting is how huge the cast was. I think you had about 60 people on the film. And also, I assume you received a lot of different feedback from different people. So was it important for you in having so many people and receiving so many different feedback from people, like interpreting the film in different ways, to get as many diverse opinions and points of view as possible?
No, is the answer. Basically, the film, it the cast, when the when I first wrote the first draft of the film, was only 12 people, was only 12 cast members.
Okay.
That was the initial plan. But as I started writing, I realized there was other areas that I wanted to cover that I didn't talk about that would be so important in this being, if this was like a real life situation, if this was a real thing being introduced into Great Britain as a government policy, how many people it would affect and so on and so forth. And so no, it's having a cast of 60 with main speaking parts was never the plan.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happened that there were all these different elements that I thought, wow, I need to cover this, and then this would be a factor that would be affected, and this, well, yeah, that happened then. So that's how it grew. That's how the cast grew to the number that it is. It's just plainly out of wanting to cover so many different areas that would be very important if it was something that was going to be introduced.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically, eventually you had, many different points of view, which is, I think, a great way for people to actually relate, because I know I don't agree with all people, especially your part, actually. In the film, when I watched yours, I was like, come on. But I think it's quite interesting, that to have so many different situations, because you can relate to at least one of them and see if that's actually how you would react if this policy was actually in place. So I think
Yeah.
that was great. Okay, so we've talked a lot about love freely but pay for sex. Thank you for all those very interesting answers. I would like to talk about what's next now, just for the film, all the projects you have related to it, and also all your other endeavors as a director, actor, spoken word artist, and everything else.
Um, wow, that's a lot. But one thing with the film is that there's so much involved and there's so many aspects to it, and it's only now that it's come out and people want to speak about it. I mean, it took a little while before people actually really got into it and took any notice, and now that's all happening, and so I can see that. Every time I talk about it, every time I look at it, every time someone else sees it, it sparks off something else. Something else happens,
Mm-hmm.
so I know that it's something that's going to be very relevant for a long time, that people are going to be talking about for a long time. I'm yet to actually have a public screening, for example,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. I mean, everything that people have seen regarding the film has all been online. So, that's going to spark a whole new thing. So for me right now, this is really my main focus.
Mm-hmm.
Is talking about the film, promoting the film, and you know, letting as many people know about it as possible.
Okay.
So in terms of other projects, I've got so many other things planned I want to do, and this is spinning off other things as well. That's sparking ideas for other projects as well. That cement this even more. But yeah, right now it's all about the pay for sex policy. That's my main focus, and will be for a little while.
Okay, cool. Well, this interview is coming to an end, so is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Um, Everyone can watch the film really if they're interested. If they hear this and they're interested in watching, they can check it out for themselves and base their own opinions on the whole the whole thing basically.
Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to answer those questions, and I'm sure we'll catch up at some point soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.